I was thousands of miles away deployed in Afghanistan when I got the email that made my blood run cold. It was from Marcus, my old college roommate, now a bank manager back home. His message was short, but it said everything I needed to know. Rob, something's wrong. Your joint account has been emptied. Call me ASAP. $210,000 gone. That was our entire savings. 8 years of sacrifice, missed vacations, skipped dinners out, all for the dream home Emma and I planned to buy when I got back. At first, I thought there had to be a mistake, a banking error, a glitch. But when I called Marcus, his next words hit harder than any explosion I'd heard in combat. Emma transferred everything, and she's opened new credit lines in your name. I was standing in a war zone, but the real battle had just begun back home. And Emma had no idea that the man watching over our accounts wasn't just any banker, he was my best friend. If you were deployed overseas and discovered your wife drained your savings and forged your name, what would you do? Let me know in the comments and stick around to hear how I turn the tables. When betrayal hit me harder than war, I never imagined my life would turn into a story like this. Growing up in Columbus, Ohio, I was the kind of guy who believed in hard work, loyalty, and doing the right thing, values that led me straight into a military career. By 34, I was a captain in the Army, proud of my service, but even prouder of the life I was building with my wife, Emma, and I met during my first year stationed at Fort Benning. She was everything I thought I needed: smart, beautiful, independent. But there was always one shadow hanging over us: my deployments. She hated them. Every time I packed my bags, I could see it in her eyes: the resentment, the fear, the loneliness she wouldn't admit to. We had fights about it, sure, but we always found a way back to each other, or so I thought. After 8 years of marriage, we finally saw a light at the end of the tunnel. I promised Emma that this third deployment would be my last. We had spent years saving every extra dollar, $210,000, to buy the house we'd always dreamed of. A fresh start, stability. Before I left, I sat down with Emma, went over every detail. The accounts, the passwords, the plan. I trusted her. She was my wife. Who else would I trust with our future? What gave me even more peace of mind was knowing Marcus was at the bank. Marcus and I had been through everything together in college: late nights, studying, broken hearts, cheap beer. After graduation, we went our separate ways. Me to the Army, him into finance, but we stayed close. When he landed a managerial position at our local bank, it felt like fate. I moved all our accounts there without hesitation. "Don't worry, Rob," Marcus said the week before I deployed, "I'll keep an eye on things while you're gone." At the time, I thought he just meant it as a friendly gesture. I had no idea how literal that promise would become. The day I left for Afghanistan, Emma hugged me a little too tightly. I remember thinking she was finally coming to terms with my career, that maybe we were stronger than the distance. For the first couple of months, everything seemed normal. We had our weekly video calls. She'd tell me about work, about the house, about how much she missed me. I could see the stress on her face, but I chalked it up to being alone again. I reassured her that soon we'd have the life we dreamed of: a home. No more deployments, a real chance to settle down. I didn't notice the subtle shifts, the way she'd dodge questions about finances, the vague answers when I asked about the house listings we'd been watching. "Let's just talk about us," she'd say, smiling through the screen. "We'll figure it all out when you get back." I wanted to believe her, but then came Marcus's email. It felt like a gut punch I never saw coming. "I was trained to handle ambushes, to survive under pressure, but nothing prepares you for realizing the person you love might be betraying you." As I stared at that message sitting in a makeshift tent halfway across the world, 1,000 thoughts ran through my head. Maybe there was a reason. Maybe Emma had to move the money for some emergency. Maybe she was protecting our assets like she always said she would. I clung to that hope as I called Marcus. But hope faded fast when he told me the truth. This wasn't a simple transfer Emma had wiped out. Our savings moved it to a private account in another bank, and worse, she had started opening credit lines in my name. The woman I trusted with everything had turned me into a victim of fraud, and she was still smiling at me every week through a camera lens. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. And if I didn't act fast, I could lose more than just money. I could lose everything. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. After my call with Marcus, I tried to convince myself there had to be an explanation, that Emma would clear everything up if I just asked her directly. So during our next video call, I kept my voice steady and asked, "Hey, I noticed some movement in our accounts. Did you transfer money for something?" Emma barely flinched. She smiled like nothing was out of the ordinary. "I moved it to a safer account," she said casually. "With you gone, I didn't want to risk anything happening. You know how unstable things can get." Her tone was defensive, like I was the one overreacting. I pressed her. "Why didn't you tell me $210,000 isn't pocket change, Emma?" That's when her expression changed. Her eyes narrowed and that calm mask slipped just enough for me to see the truth beneath it. "I don't need to run every decision by you, Robert," she snapped. "I'm handling things while you're off playing soldier." Those words hit harder than I expected. Playing soldier, I ended the call shortly after, my mind racing. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about trust, or what was left of it. I updated Marcus, asking him to monitor anything else unusual. Hours later, he called me back, his voice tense. "Rob, I found something else." "It's worse." Worse, I didn't think that was possible. But then he told me Emma had opened 2 new credit lines under my name. She'd forged my signature on loan applications, pulling an additional $50,000 in credit debt. Tied directly to me, I felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. "How?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "She had enough of your personal info to get past the basic checks, and well-being, your wife didn't raise any red flags." Of course it didn't. Who would suspect a spouse I was trained for combat, for strategy, for survival? But nothing in my military career prepared me for being blindsided by the person I thought was on my side. I contacted my JAG officer, the military lawyer assigned to our unit, and explained everything. He confirmed what I feared: being deployed didn't shield me from financial ruin back home. If Emma kept going, I could return not to a dream house, but to a mountain of debt and a wrecked credit score that would take years to rebuild. And that wasn't even the worst-case scenario. "If she's using your identity," the JAG warned, "you could be liable for fraud charges if this spirals." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was risking my life overseas, and meanwhile, my wife was dismantling everything I'd worked for. Marcus and I agreed to freeze any remaining joint accounts immediately, but Emma was moving fast, too fast. The next day, Marcus called again. "She's trying to transfer the loan funds to an offshore account." I clenched my fists, feeling completely powerless. Every second I spent stuck in Afghanistan was another second Emma had to destroy what little was left. I knew I had to get home, but emergency leave wasn't something handed out easily, especially not during an active deployment. While I waited for approval, I dug deeper. I started searching through Emma's social media accounts, something I never thought I'd have a reason to do. That's when I found them. Photos: Emma smiling arm in arm with a man I didn't recognize at first. But after a little more digging, the pieces clicked into place. It was her ex-boyfriend, the one she never talked about. The one I'd heard whispers of from mutual friends. The same man who had served time for financial fraud. They weren't just reconnecting, they were everywhere together. Restaurants, bars, even a weekend getaway. All while I was dodging bullets in a foreign country. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal. And now I wasn't just dealing with a reckless spouse, I was dealing with a calculated scheme. I realized Emma wasn't acting alone. She was being guided, maybe even manipulated by a professional con artist. But I also knew this wasn't just his game. Emma had made her choice. And if I didn't act soon, I wouldn't have anything left to come home to. The approval for emergency leave couldn't come fast enough, because now this wasn't just about saving my money, it was about saving my future. When my emergency leave was finally approved, I didn't tell Emma I was coming home. I wanted no. I needed to see the truth for myself. After a grueling flight back to Ohio, I drove straight from the airport to our house, the place that was supposed to be our sanctuary. Felt foreign before I even stepped inside. The driveway was empty. No sign of Emma's car. I unlocked the door and my heart sank. It was like walking into a hollow shell. Furniture gone, electronics missing. Even family heirlooms, my grandfather's watch, my grandmother's jewelry vanished. Every trace of our life had been stripped away. I walked room to room, hoping stupidly that maybe this was some misunderstanding, But the deeper I looked, the clearer it became. Emma hadn't just emptied our accounts. She'd emptied our home and our marriage. I stood in the middle of that bare living room, surrounded by nothing but echoes of what used to be, and felt a wave of helplessness I'd never known, not even in combat zones. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "Rob, you need to hear this," he said, his voice low and urgent. I braced myself. After everything, what more could there be? I got a call from a contact in federal compliance. Marcus continued, "There's a flag on your accounts. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit has been alerted to suspicious activity tied to your name." I felt my knees weaken. "What are you saying?" I asked, though I already knew. "They think you might be involved in money laundering, offshore transfers, fraudulent loans." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The room spun around me. Emma and that con artist X weren't just stealing from me. They were setting me up. All those transfers, the forged credit lines, the offshore accounts. It wasn't just about taking my money. It was about burying me under a mountain of criminal suspicion. If I hadn't come home when I did, I could have landed back in the States to find myself in handcuffs labeled as a felon instead of a soldier. I clenched my jaw, rage burning through the shock. "How long do I have before they come knocking?" I asked. Marcus hesitated. "Not long, but there's a chance to get ahead of this. If we can prove you're the victim, not the perpetrator." I hung up and immediately called my JAG officer, explaining everything. He connected me with a civilian attorney specializing in financial crimes. Within hours, I was sitting in a law office handing over every piece of evidence. I had emails, account statements, screenshots of Emma and her ex plastered all over social media. "This is bad," the lawyer said bluntly, but not hopeless. He explained that if we could trace the transactions and show I had no access or knowledge of these moves, we could build a defense. But time was critical. Meanwhile, Marcus dug deeper into the bank records. He found a pattern. Emma and her ex had used my identity to funnel money through multiple shell accounts, likely as part of a larger scheme. I wasn't just collateral damage. I was the perfect cover, a deployed Army captain with clean credit, predictable income, and no way to monitor what was happening back home. I could feel the walls closing in. My career, my reputation, my freedom all hanging by a thread, because the woman I trusted had turned my life into a weapon against me. And worst of all, Emma didn't even try to hide. Later that night, I tracked her down thanks to a location tag she carelessly left on a social media post. She was at a downtown hotel alone. Her ex-boyfriend had already skipped town. Typical, when I confronted her, she didn't cry. She didn't apologize, she smirked. "You were never supposed to find out this soon," she said, crossing her arms like she was the victim. "If you'd stayed overseas like you were supposed to, everything would have been fine." Fine. I looked at the woman I once promised forever to and realized I didn't recognize her at all. "This isn't over," I told her, my voice cold. Not by a long shot, because now it wasn't just about betrayal, it was about survival, and I wasn't going down without a fight. I walked out of that hotel knowing one thing Emma thought she'd already won. She believed I was just a soldier, good at following orders, but clueless when it came to playing her kind of game. But what she didn't know was that the Army had taught me more than how to survive on a battlefield. It taught me strategy, patience, how to strike when the enemy least expected it, and this time I wasn't fighting alone. The first move was securing my legal defense. My attorney worked around the clock, gathering every shred of evidence, proving I was being framed. Marcus provided detailed transaction histories showing that the transfers happened while I was deployed, often during times I was on active duty in locations with no internet access. We built a timeline so airtight, even the FBI would have to see the truth. But clearing my name wasn't enough. I wanted justice. Marcus discovered that Emma and her ex had used a network of fake businesses to launder the money. But they'd gotten sloppy. Greed always leads to mistakes. One of the shell companies they used was registered under Emma's maiden name. That tied her directly to the fraud, not just as a pawn, but as a willing participant. With that, my lawyer coordinated with federal agents. Instead of waiting for them to come after me, we handed over a full dossier: bank records, forged documents, social media proof, and business registrations, linking Emma and her ex to the scheme. The agents were impressed. "This is one of the cleanest victim-led cases we've seen." One of them said, "You've saved us months of investigation." While the feds prepared their case, I moved to protect what was left of my assets. Marcus helped me freeze every account Emma had access to, joint or otherwise. We filed emergency motions to seize any property or funds tied to the fraudulent activity. But there was still the matter of the missing valuables. My family heirlooms, the furniture, the electronics she'd stripped from the house. That's where another old connection came in. A buddy from my unit, now working in private security, offered to run a trace on local pawn shops and online marketplaces. Within days, we found listings matching my grandfather's watch and my grandmother's jewelry. Emma hadn't even bothered to hide it. She'd sold them under a fake name, but used her own phone number for contact sloppy. We reported everything to law enforcement, who quickly tied the sales back to her. It was only a matter of time before the walls closed in. Then came the final play. Through a court order, we intercepted communications between Emma and her ex. Turns out he'd already scammed her too, taking a cut of the money and vanishing, leaving her to face the consequences alone. When federal agents showed up at that same downtown hotel, Emma was blindsided. She was arrested on charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. I was notified the moment it happened. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, but all I felt was relief. Relief that it was over, or at least that the worst was behind me. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly after that. With the criminal charges stacked against Emma, she had no leverage. My lawyer ensured that I recovered nearly all of our savings, minus what had already been lost in the scam. The courts also ruled in my favor regarding the debt she tried to saddle me with. The forged loans were voided and my credit was restored. It wasn't a perfect victory. Some things, like the sentimental value of my grandparents' heirlooms, couldn't be replaced. But I walked away with my freedom, my career intact, and a hard-earned lesson about trust. When I returned to my unit, word had spread about what happened. I expected pity, but instead I got respect. Not many guys could have handled that mess the way you did. One of my commanding officers told me, it wasn't about handling it. It was about surviving it and making sure no one could ever use my loyalty against me again. I didn't plan on seeing Emma again. After everything she'd done, draining our savings, forging my name, dragging me into a federal investigation, I thought the next time I'd hear her name would be in court documents or news reports. But fate had other ideas. A few weeks after her arrest, my lawyer called. She's requested a meeting, he said, face to face. At first I laughed. The audacity. What could she possibly have to say? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wanted to look her in the eye one last time. Not for closure, not for answers. I wanted her to see that I wasn't the broken man she thought she'd leave behind. When I walked into that sterile visitation room at the county jail, Emma was already seated, jumpsuit shackles, and a look that was somewhere between defiance and desperation. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she broke the silence. I didn't think you'd come. I sat down across from her, keeping my expression neutral. Why did you ask me here, Emma? She shrugged, but I could see the cracks in her facade. I wanted you to know it wasn't supposed to happen like this. I raised an eyebrow. You mean you didn't plan to steal everything and frame me for fraud? Her jaw tightened. It was his idea. He said we'd be set for life, that you'd never find out. I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. You're right about one thing I wasn't supposed to find out, because you thought I was too busy serving my country to notice my own wife betraying me. Her eyes dropped to the table. He left me, she muttered, took the money and ran. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost, but sympathy has its limits. That's what happens when you trust a con artist, I said. Funny, I know exactly how that feels. She looked up, then tears welling in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. You didn't just steal money, Emma. You tried to destroy my life, my career, my name. She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand to stop her. I didn't come here for apologies or excuses. I came here so you'd understand one thing. I stood locking eyes with her. One final time you lost. And the next time you think about using someone's trust as a weapon, remember how this ended. With that, I walked out, leaving her behind, both literally and figuratively. The fallout from the case rippled through the following months. Emma took a plea deal, 5 years in federal prison plus restitution. Most of the money had been recovered thanks to quick action from Marcus and the legal team, but she was ordered to repay what little remained missing. her ex-boyfriend. Last. I heard the FBI was still hunting him down, but he'd burned enough bridges that it was only a matter of time before justice caught up with him too. As for me, I focused on rebuilding. The Army cleared my record of any suspicion, and I was offered counseling services to help process the betrayal. At first I refused. I thought I could handle it on my own, but even the strongest soldiers need support sometimes. It was during one of those sessions that I met Claire, a military nurse, who'd seen her fair share of battlefield wounds, both physical and emotional. We started talking first about service, then about life beyond the uniform. She didn't flinch when I told her my story. There was no pity in her eyes, just understanding. Over time, those conversations turned into something more. With Claire, I didn't have to explain why loyalty mattered. She lived it every day. The scars Emma left didn't disappear overnight, but they became a reminder not of weakness, but of resilience. I learned to trust again, not blindly, but wisely. Looking back, I realized that war zones aren't always marked by borders or battle lines. Sometimes the real war is fought at home, in the quiet betrayals, the unseen ambushes. But like any mission, survival comes down to preparation and knowing who's truly on your side. And this time I walked away not as a victim, but as a man who refused to be defeated by someone else's greed.